Good morning.
And if you can believe it, this is underground film collective.
Filth are my politics. Filth is my life.
It happens. It's a big night for us. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful big night for us. Thank you all for coming out and dressing up and looking amazing and so beautiful. This is so beautiful.
Welcome to the Underground Film Collective.
Who's here for the first time? Who's like experiencing this club for the first time? Oh, it feels so cool. Who's watching this film for the first time tonight? Wow! Watching this film for more than the first time. Oh, I love it. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, you came in, we gave you things. If you've never seen this film, you might have been like, what the fuck's going on? If you have seen this film, you know what's up.
Okay.
We're going to get into that after this chat.
Fantastic.
But we're just here to say hey.
Yeah, we're going to say hi.
Hi.
There are some changes coming to the club, and we wanted to be up here just to quickly hand over to the wonderful Emma and Finley, who will be running the film club next year, and this is going to be take it away.
Hello everyone, I'm Emma and this is Finley. We'll be taking over next year. We'll be restructuring a little bit, but it's going to be staying extremely community focused. Lots of opportunities for people to come show the films that they want to show, and collaborate and talk and have fun. We don't have that much to say at the moment because we haven't totally planned ahead. But for now, we'll introduce the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's not one that really requires much of an introduction. I think most people here are probably well aware of its significance as a cult film. It's probably the cult classic. It's a film that celebrates individuality, sexual fluidity, and expression. It's something for everyone. Everyone can find themselves in it, and it holds that place in our culture, and it has done for 50 years, almost. They started production on this, they started shooting 50 years ago this week, and it came out next year, 50 years ago. So that's what we're celebrating tonight. We'll be having a Q&A with the very incredible Brian Thomson at the end of the film, the production designer. He's with us this evening. And we'll be having our costume contest, so for anyone who would like to be a candidate for that, we'll be doing a little parade, and you can walk around and show off your fantastic costumes. And Brian will be choosing our winner.
I believe the prize is a beer.
For anyone who doesn't drink, we can sort something out. And then we'll all be going to the pub afterwards. Brian will be joining us, so if you don't get a chance to ask a question at the Q&A, you can chat to him there. And I think we'll hand it over to Rachel, who's going to walk us through the props. But before she tells you what you're allowed to do with them, I'm going to tell you what you're not allowed to do. Because anyone who's familiar with it knows it gets very messy, there's water, there's rice, etc. We are here tonight at AFTRS as guests. We'd like to continue hosting here, so we need to remain in their good books. So no throwing anything that's going to cause a mess. Keep the screen safe and protected. Be respectful of everyone around you, etc. And yeah. I think we'll hand over to Rachel.
Hi everyone. I've heard that we have some virgins in. Who's a virgin? Yes, I love it. That's a okay, that's why we gave you all rubbers. Safety. For some other things, I'm going to go through. I know that we have a lot of versions, so I'll go through the prompt list here. But ultimately, at the end of the day, do what feels right. I know that I do. So first, the newspapers. When Brad and Janet are caught in a storm, a song's attached. So a song starts going, be prepared. It's musical, people, let's go, catch up. Recovery. Essentially, do what Janet does, except for, at the end of the movie. Unless, you want to be wet. Flashlights during the song, again, there's a light. Get your phone out, put the flash on, have a sing-song. It's the calmest the movie's gonna be. Enjoy it while you can. What else have we got? Balloons. Now, prop. Fabulous. When Frank snaps his gloves, we're all gonna do this. Emulate, imitate, enjoy. Party hat, you know what? I'm gonna be lovely during this. You can put it on now, but at the end of the, let's say diner scene, dinner scene, thank you. Put your hat on, let's all enjoy what they're about to eat. At the end of the day, make some noise. When the people on screen make some noise too. We're part of a collective, we're part of an experience, we're part of a journey. Another really big thing about the Rocky Horror Picture Show is the call-outs. We're going to adhere to the main two. You can do others if you're clever. But if you're not a comedian, if you don't have a stand-up show, I don't want to hear you try out some new material. I'm the only one here who has a type 5, okay? But we're going to do Slut when our lovely heroine Janet is introduced. We call her what she is. Same with our fucking other manky guy, Brad. We're going to call him what he is too. Arsehole. Try and keep up. If you don't yell out when you want to. Have fun. We can't have water, but just, I don't want to say get wet, but do what you want to do, Thank you.
Well, I think we all have to say a big thanks to Jim Sharman, the director, who lives a mile away, and to that cast. My God.
A round of applause for Brian as well. Just before I start, me and Brian were talking before, and there's supposedly you see crew members wearing striped clothing in the film. Did anyone see it? Because neither of us did. No? Okay. So
Next time.
Okay, would you like to start by just introducing yourself? Tell us
Well,
how you came to be part of Rocky Horror.
oh God. Well, 50 years ago, we were actually filming. We started on the Monday of this week, and that's why we decided to have the showing tonight. I think it's. I'm always amazed when I see it. I've seen it in all over the world in different places and with a lot more noise and direction and everything. But I think it still holds up as a movie, and I think the kind of storytelling is pretty good. I would have to say that, but I'd worked with Jim. We'd worked on a few things here. We'd done Jesus Christ Superstar, and we got taken to London to do it in a theatre over there. That's where we met Richard O'Brien, who was in the chorus. Then we did a small show at the Royal Court, which Richard was also in, and he started playing these songs, which Jim recorded, and we took it to a producer who gave us some money to do the show. We did it in a room twice as big as this stage, and it was astonishing just to have Tim Curry there, sort of thing, and most of that cast, and so we did it around the world, and then we decided to do it as a film, and we couldn't quite work out how to do it. We were taken out to Bray Studio, which is just out by Windsor Castle, and it had a tank, which was kind of lucky for us because we had the pool at the end. But before we left, the man who was showing us around said, "Do you want to come and see the old house?" And we both kind of said, "Oh, you may as well." And we had to put gumboots on and walk across this soggy paddock, and there it was. And it was, the owners wanted to tear it down, but it had a preservation order on it. And the owners had taken the lead out of the roof, so that all the water had got in, and the inside was indescribably fabulous for us. And I just said to Jim, "Well, here it is. This is how we do it." So we, luckily, at the time in Britain, there wasn't a lot of films being made, but we got the crew from Tommy and from the Devils. That's the art department. And the stunning work that they did, I learned so much. We'd done a little tiny film here, but nothing like this. And the things that they could do, and I think the look of the bits that we did is pretty stunning. And that's where I learned how to make tiles for Starstruck, and a lot of things that in that movie I carried through my career. But I think at the time, because we were making a film about aliens landing, on the planet and finding this place and living there, nobody could really tell us, "Oh, you wouldn't have that in the living room," which has happened to me on many movies where someone will say, "Oh no, she wouldn't have that in her bedroom," or whatever. And with this, the producer said a couple of things, and I said, "Well, you tell me how aliens are going to set up." And it's all kind of based on a naivety of what it's like to live on this planet. Like all the art that's in it is things that they were aware of, but they thought they had it. Like, you can have two Mona Lisas, you can have that painting on the bottom of the pool. There's no rules. So that was I think it's the most free thing I've ever worked on, where what we did, nobody said, "Oh." There's one thing, I wanted a proper diving board so that Frank could actually dive into the pool, and they wouldn't pay for that. So that was the only thing. We just had a plank. That was the only thing that we returned, and it is staggering that in the world that we're in, and that we work in, that can actually happen. And I long for those days when you have that sort of you have that support, and to have such a fabulous team of people. And I'm not bullshitting about this. I mean, I think what they did was exactly what I hoped it would be. I remember when it first came out, it got very heavily criticised, and in fact, it opened in London and played around the clock, played like 20 hours or something in one cinema in the West End over the weekends, and nobody went. So a couple of executives at Fox pulled it off the shelf and played it with a film called Phantom of the Paradise, which was the first really true midnight movie. And they put Rocky on one night in New York before the other film, and all the kids who came to see Phantom of the Paradise were kind of a bit grumbly about it. But they started to go back, and they started to fill in, like there's a line for every moment in the, which I've heard of various places. When we were going to make Shock Treatment, I went to America to find Denton, and so I went all over the place, and every Friday I'd go and see the movie in a different town in the States, and it was extraordinary. I think the funniest thing was the line, "And crawling on the planet's face, some insects called the human race," and everybody got up and started crawling around. stage. And it was just amazing. I think that a film that invites you to be witty. I mean, I think the show itself has gotten a little bit smutty. I mean, obviously that's part of the whole thing, but it's the kind of wit that I really like that gets put into it, and so that's how we did the movie.
You touched on it a bit before, but so you designed the original stage production as well. Do you mind talking more about your process of translating it from stage to screen?
Well, we went to London to do Jesus Christ Superstar, a massive big show which ran for 8 years or something. So we'd had that experience. We in the business, you know, the thing is, I want to do a show on the West End, I want to do this kind of thing, on Broadway, whatever. And because we did it first time up, it wasn't, we just wanted to do something that was ours. And so when we met Richard, he in fact was playing, he was the understudy to Herod. And when he went on, he played it like a bother boy, you know, he had a flat top hair thing, and he had a long coat and crepe sole shoes. And Andrew Lloyd Webber hated it, so he wasn't allowed to do it. So he was kind of paid off, and he left. And he'd go and get, you know, a bit stoned, and, you know, I'll show these guys how to write a, you know, musical. And so all of the songs when Jim first recorded them on a cassette tape in his basement, all sounded a bit the same. They were little bit country and western and a bit plunky on the guitar. And Richard Hartley, who was the musical director, put all the arrangements in, which obviously made them all different and what they needed to be. So we did a little show at the Royal Court, which has got a theatre called the Theatre Upstairs, which, as I said, is about as big as this area, holds 60 people. We did a Sam Shepard play, Sam Shepard, the American playwright. It has a character called Willie the Space Freak, and we thought, maybe Richard would be good to play that. So he came in, and his dialogue when he came into the show was what had gone before backwards. In other words, complete gibberish. But as the audience climbed up the stairs to the theatre upstairs, Richard Hartley would sit at the piano and the cast would sing doo-wop songs, you know, like Duke of Earl and that kind of period of songs. And that was when Richard started playing these songs, and Jim took him and recorded them all. And as I said, we were given £1,000 by the Royal Court and £1,000 by Michael White, and that was our entire budget. So given the fact we didn't have any real money to spend, I came up with the idea of setting it in a sort of a haunted theatre, a cinema, or a kind of a derelict cinema, and we could do that pretty cheaply. And like we had theatre seats that we got from an old theatre. We had we put up a gauze in front of the band, so that everything was kind of just thrown together. And the idea that Sue Blaine, the costume designer, and myself had was everything. We back then used the word tacky, so everything had to be ripped and had to be, you know, nothing could be new or look too kind of polished. So when the show took off, we then moved up Kings Road actually to a derelict cinema, which was fabulous. And I mean, I think in today's world you wouldn't be able to do that because it wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't be safe, or it wouldn't be a lot of council regulations. Then we moved up to another theatre, which was in fact, it had been a theatre complex, which we put back into being a theatre. And we always had a catwalk through the audience, and we had a screen on stage. And it was always very simple and very based on the kind of story, the songs. And I mean, if you could just imagine Tim Curry on stage, I mean, it was pretty amazing. And Nell and Pat Quinn and Richard O'Brien. And Jonathan Adams, who plays Dr. Scott, was our narrator in that version. So when it came to the film, the first version that Richard and Jim wrote, I thought was a bit, I can use the word now, but I wouldn't know what the word was then. It was a bit Marvel. Richard O'Brien, Riff Raff and Magenta sort of had superhuman qualities. They could leap across rooms and things. And I thought that was just not, there's something kind of, I love horror movies where a small group of people, or science fiction films, while the world's kind of exploding, you focus on this little story. And I think that's what we liked about Brad and Janet entering into this strange world. And it was finding that house that gave us the look to the film. Because all the sets we built a lot of sets, they would go over to the house and take moulds of everything. So we had the most fabulous resource just across the paddock. And we built the church and all that kind of stuff. The billboard was going to say things go better with Coke, but but they wouldn't let us do it. Coke wouldn't let us do it. And at the end, it was going to actually be the Fox logo. It was going to, with the searchlights, was what Frankenfurter was going to enter on, and Fox wouldn't let us do that. So there were a couple. I said there were no restrictions, but they sort of were. But that's how it kind of grew. So everything about it was sort of accidental, meeting the right person, and us. I think the team of people, Sue Blaine, I met, I don't know if you know, a designer called Maria Bjornsson. She designed Phantom of the Opera. Wonderful, wonderful designer. And I was doing a little show there, and Jim said, "Oh, ask Maria to do the costumes." And we only had a page and a half of what the story kind of was. And I gave it to her, and she said, "Oh, I don't do drag shows, but I have a friend who does," and that was Sue. And that corset that Tim wears actually had been in a show that Maria and Sue had done in Glasgow. So a lot of things came together by accident, but they all gelled.
Wonderful. The film is really rich with references, a lot of sci-fi and a lot of art. Would you like to talk about some of the art references? I think there are some interesting ones.
Well, I think I'd been to Paris, but I hadn't been I hadn't been to Italy, and I hadn't. So I did this thing where I went to all those kind of places, and I came back and I thought, you know what, I want to put those things. I believe. I like to think of myself as a pop artist, and what I do, you take something from one context and you put it in another, and then you mix it with something. So it's kind of collage, and I still do that in the theatre today. So like for instance, the pink tiles. I was staying in that little hotel in Amsterdam, and it had a little bathroom with pink tiles, and so I made a note of that, and all of the, why not put the Sistine Chapel on the bottom of the pool, and why not do all those things? So you will have noticed that that portrait of the two Americans with the pitchfork turned into the laser at the end. So I think all things like that. I just needed something to hitch onto, so that the big the story is about Frankenfurter creating Rocky. So that's on the floor you've got the kind of Adam and Jesus kind of thing, and I think that God and Adam, and so everything, and I think some of the shots with the Mona Lisa in just kind of watching, observing what's going on, were kind of all the better because they were handed, they were mirror image of each other, so you'd get a different kind of look from that character, and we had a fantastic set decorator who took me to a props hire place, and that's where I got the clock, and all the little things that are the little white figurines and the little heads and things that are all through the kind of entrance to the house, and at the end of my choosing the stuff, the man at the desk asked the set decorator if he was serious about wanting to hire, take these things. So I took things that had never been hired and put them in this movie. And I think all the little ornaments you see, I think most of them were mine. I just bring things in and put them in. And I found it. What I enjoyed about the process of making the film was watching the actors, watching the way that they handled the situation. I thought that was extraordinary. And also I thought at first it was all a bit bright. I think I wanted it to kind of maybe look a little bit more gothic, but not overly so. But I think that the decisions made in the camera department stuff were really good. And I think that Jim's kind of instinctual, the way it's cut, does allow the audience in. I think that's the little doorways that tell you to come into this thing. And so yeah, that's sort of how that all happened.
At this point, I'll open it up to the audience if anyone has any questions.
Hi, are there any misconceptions that you've seen over the years about the film that you'd like to clear up, or any
Sure.
theories?
Well, the one I thought I read just the other day was that the tank where Rocky was born in had been in some horror film in the 30s or something. Well, I mean, I think that the thing I was most proud about that was getting the rainbow in, because at that point, that's in the early 70s, I was putting rainbows in lots of things. And so when Timmy was doing the colours, I was yelling out, red. That's why he looked a bit flustered. I was yelling out the colours. There's so many. Tell me a few more.
Tell you a few more.
Yeah, a few more of those. There was talk about someone said, we nicked the lips at the beginning of the film from something, but there was a phone call. Have you got that image? Me and the wall.
Yeah.
I was actually, Jim called me up and said we need to talk about the opening credits, and the idea was that there was going to be a book that would open to pages of images from the various films that are mentioned, and I said, I thought it was a bit dull. And I had the Man Ray lips on my wall in my studio, and I just said to Jim, why don't we do something far more kind of sensual, like a pair of lips doing the song. And so we blacked out Pat Quinn's face, and we filmed it, but it was so jumpy, it was moving all over the place, and you could see every little hair on her face. So we had to put her in a sort of a thing that held her head, and every frame had to be matted out. But all that blood lettering, I did all that by hand, and I think I got paid £250 for doing that, which I was very proud of. And I've got the letter. I've actually got the contracted me to do the credits. But it was fun, developing that. And I put it on the angle just to kind of play around with it a bit more. What else?
Well, I heard that the reason that you don't see the size of the church as you're filming
We didn't
inside
build
is
it.
because you were too broke. But
Yeah.
you just said
We built 2 ends. Yeah, I've got a model of. I had a photo of them. I do everything by models. So there's models of it. I've still got one of the pool, and I used to look through a matchbox because I had one of those lensy things, but I prefer just to look through a sort of a matchbox because it's kind of about the right proportion. There was not. I just thought of another one. There's a hell of a lot of things online that are just. I mean, I'm fascinated that people think that, but there's one whole thing about all the art in it, And I find that, and I kind of think, oh, gee, didn't know I was doing that. But it's good, isn't it? I mean, I think it's good that it's kind of free enough that people can interpret themselves. What else?
I mean, I also heard that the coffin that gets brought into the church at the end is a child, and it's supposed to be like really deep
It
and
is.
scary, meaningful.
It's a child's one, yeah.
Is there like a specific reason why you chose the child?
I think it was just a sort of a. It was kind of. There's a lot of meanness in the film, right? I mean, they kill people, they eat people, they bash people with whips, you know. And there's a great line that we didn't hit, which is, you know, he's whipping him, and then he does that one, and they yell out, "How's your backhand?" So every moment in the film has been turned by some audience into another thing that just changes the kind of direction of it. But yeah, it was a child's coffin. I think it was just to make it a bit bizarre. And also you notice that they changed from the black flowers of the funeral, and they turned those things around to the white flowers of a wedding. And the stained glass window thing was kind of based on a Roy Lichtenstein painting of an engagement ring with rays of light coming out of it. So everything's. I always base stuff on. I always look through pop art books and anything that I can find that might just spark off. You know, you could turn that into something else, and that's what I enjoy about my process. Is I mean, I don't know if you saw West Side Story last year on the harbour. That was I saw an image of subway cars being tossed into the ocean, and I thought, oh, that's interesting thought for down on the harbour. So it's things like that there's always a place for them somewhere else. So you could invent all sorts of reasons why the things are there, but often it's just kind of an instinctive thing. And luckily on that film, no one really questioned it, except for Coke and Fox. Well, see, Coke were quite happy that we used a Coke box in the show, but they didn't think we should use, because in the lab there was going to be a lot, and the thing where Eddie was going to be full of Coke bottles. I mean, and that's just an Andy Warhol thing. So I mean, it's not, you know. And I just thought, oh, don't they get it?
Were there any other questions? Yep.
How did you make like the statues for when they get Medusified?
They just were cast off the bodies.
Okay.
As I said, we had a truly remarkable team of sculptors, and they would say, you know, with the Davids either side of the entrance into the bridal suite, they said it's called handed. We, you know, they're the same, but they're mirror image, and they'd say, "Do you want more handed?" And yeah, sure. They just were. They were cast. That's why the position isn't exactly kind of perfect when they and their clothes had fallen off some. Oh, the other thing I should tell you is that Nell's breasts have been cut out by Disney. So if you watch it on Disney, you won't see it. So you're lucky to get it. And they called Jim up and they said, "We're going to have to do an edit. Would you like to be involved?" He said, "Oh, well, what are you going to do?" And he said, "We have to take out Columbia's breast." And Jim said, "Oh, well, I don't have any experience of doing that, but you might have." Which I thought was a pretty good comeback. I mean, Jim has a wonderfully dry sort of wit, and maybe that's why you get small coffins. You know what I mean? That's. I mean, if it's going to be something, why can't it be something that's a little different?
Anyone else? Yeah, okay.
What was your favourite gag, and how has that changed through repeated viewings?
My favourite line is, or should I say, Dr. Von Scott, because that's my line. I just suggested that to one of the actors when we did the original show. When you say gag, what do you mean?
I think it's a terrifically funny film.
It is
as well
funny,
as it's got so many elements to it.
Yeah,
And
but
I'm
it's
just
not
wondering-
sort of funny. I think there's a dryness to the humour, and there's a kind of an Aussiness to the humour too. I think, which I think is good. I love a lot of what Tim Curry that character does. I love him throwing the stuff on the screen. The looks he gives to the audience, breaking through them. That I think that's wonderful. And what's your favourite?
I thought the silhouettes of Tim, yeah.
We did that in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. I think the fact that they both go into the same room but they've got a different filter is also pretty good. I think that's pretty good. Dr. Scott coming through the wall. I'd heard this story that the second AD came to me and said, "Where's the secret entrance into the?" Oh, is that there? Yeah. Where's the secret entrance to the laboratory? And I said, "Well, there isn't one. We've talked about that." And they said, "Oh, well, how does Dr. Scott get into the lab?" I said, "Well, as far as I'm concerned, you can push him through the wall." That's what we did. But that was. There were moments, a lot of moments that were like that. I don't, on the church thing, I don't think we needed the extra walls anyway. So.
Maddie?
I was going to ask, you said that you made a lot of sets with the moulds of the house that you found. Did you film any of it in that house? Or was it
We filmed the entrance lobby.
Yeah.
We put the elevator, the bottom part of that's why there's that black cut when the elevator goes up and then it pops out of the lab. I put that geodesic dome on the top because that's the dome on the top of the thing, and the idea of the thing that comes down with the colours was that was like a swizzle stick you might have in a cocktail. So there's always something that can become something else. Is that answer the question?
I was also going to ask, how many people were in the art department in that first?
Well, I don't know the exact number. I mean, I had an art director. I had the kind of set I think they're called set decorators now. You know, when someone wins an Oscar, there's the production designer and the other person. Well, Ian, who was the Whittaker, won an Oscar with Luciano Arrighi on Howard's End, and he was a person who nothing was too difficult. I'd made the floor in the ballroom quite kind of dusty and dirty, and Jim said, "Oh no, I really think I need it to be reflective," and Ian just said, "Okay," and everyone get a cloth, and we all just got down and wiped the floor, and the body under the table. That was we just went to the butcher shop early in the morning. Myself and Ian got stuff. When we set the table for the dining scene, and that was the day that a couple of Fox executives were coming to the set, and that was in the house. That scene. When it was all set up, I thought there's just something wrong with this because Magenta will have seen magazines and she will know that you have a thing that you have, and then you have these other things, and you have something to drink out of. But she didn't know what they were. That's why some people have got like a plate and 8 forks and chopsticks, and they're drinking out of anything that she could find. It's just to give a kind of a naive slant on how aliens would adapt, I mean, I don't know how they would, but that was my thinking, well, if you went to Mars, you wouldn't quite know how they did certain things. but you'd have a go at it, wouldn't you? That was the sort of the idea. And these Fox executives were a bit shocked. And the cast hadn't been told about what was underneath, so that was quite a moment where they were a bit, they were shocked.
Was this the first time that you'd worked with a team underneath you as production designer?
Yes.
Yeah. How did you find that?
I found it fabulous. Because they were so good. I mean, sometimes, you work, I think, I wish I was working in theatre. And then when I'm working in theatre, I think, I wish I was working on a film. Because the thing I love about working on a film is every day, or what I do is I always divide the movie up into various areas and give each dresser or decorator their sort of area. So I love it at the end of the day when they come back and report on what they've found, and everything that's in any movie I make, there has to be a very good explanation as to why it's there. And because what I learnt from working on that movie was how important detail is. I mean, you can get a list of 100 questions on this movie. What was that? What was that? What was that? Over particularly in the States and all the fan sites, and some of them, I think I can answer just about all of them. But there's a couple I think, I'm not quite sure what that was. But having a good team, and I think also because it was the first kind of movie I was doing. We'd done a little science fiction film here, where I think myself and a couple other people were the art department. We actually filmed in a house in Cook Road, just up the, and I promised them a really nice paint job. They were pleased with that. But because we were filming part of it in black and white, I painted it all grey. So they weren't that pleased at the end. But I think just watching people with those skills, people who can carve and sculpt and paint and you'll note one thing I'm very proud of in that movie is the top of the elevator's got dust on it. Because it drives me crazy in movies when people get under a bed or something and there's no dust. And I always think, gee. And I think that detail, I love that area of detail. I always try and make sure it's got all the bits that it needs.
We've maybe got time for one.
I don't mind if we can go on.
This is quite a general question. There are so many beautiful moments in the film, and it's just such a visually amazing piece of work. I'm kind of curious what you're most proud of in the film, and also what you would change next time if there was a next time.
There's a couple of moments where things that I really like are given away a little bit early. I love the fact that she's got Eddie, the image of Eddie taking up an entire wall, and it's reflected in that guitar. But you have seen it a little bit earlier, just a glimpse of it. I would prefer that hadn't happened. But you don't. I often say to my crew, look, if we see it in rushes, we should be happy. Because you may not never, entire things get, but nothing in this was, the only thing was Brad had a song. What was it called? Janet had, it was it Once in a While, I think? And that was cut out. The other funny line was when they pull the machine and they see Brad in the bedroom with Frank, the crowd yell out, "Brad smokes!" Things like that. It's hard to think back to. There's an energy, there's a thing that happens when you're doing these things, and I look at it sometimes and think, my God, how did that happen? How did we actually do that? I think because there's an interesting dynamic in when you're working on movies. When you're developing the movie, you're really important to the director, right? Really important. But as soon as the camera crew come, you fall down a lot of rungs, and it's hard to kind of claw your way back. I mean, people like, Baz and Catherine. I mean, Catherine Martin and Baz Luhrmann. That's a wonderful relationship where I can't imagine any camera crew telling Catherine that can't be done. And that's the sort of ideal way, but it just does happen where it's sort of, I kind of wanted the church to be a bit more kind of just symmetrical, a bit more Wes Anderson, but and when I arrived there was a crane sort of up the top and I thought, oh, wasn't quite what I had in mind. But then we didn't really have, it wasn't English background, so it wouldn't have quite worked anyway if we'd gone just with the church in the middle of the frame. But no, most things, apart from what I said about the lighting, at the beginning I thought there should be more. I put a lot of things in away from walls so that I thought we might get slightly more gothic-y kind of shadows. But I just don't think that's. Even 50 years on, I don't think I'd change that. I have no idea, actually. Because if those things just don't come along, and if they... Like, I would love to have done Priscilla. I did the film before Priscilla with Stephen Elliott. And he just said to me, oh, you would want to come out in the outback in an old bus. And I didn't say no. But he claims I turned it down, which I didn't do, but I thought they did a wonderful, wonderful job. But I'd love to have done that film. So yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I mean, when you do your own, it is. There's something. I haven't seen this for a while, but there's something really nice about feeling that you've accomplished something. That even though a lot of people would have preferred that it made $200 million in the first weekend. It's taken 50 years to do that, but I mean that's just the reality of was the world ready for that movie? Well, a certain group of people were ready for it, and they're still ready for it. They still go. I mean, I called Nell up to see if she'd come along to this tonight. She's in America with Barry Bostwick and Pat Quinn doing a US and Canada tour of the 49th anniversary of Rocky Horror. So, I mean, its life just continues on. And I mean, you obviously weren't alive when it was made, and you wouldn't have been around till quite a few generations had seen the film and hopefully enjoyed the film. I think that's and I don't think it's dated. I mean, I know there's trouble with the kind of sexual politics of it, but I don't. It never meant to be. It's meant to be what it is, not taking on that whole. Oh, rainbows, however, is a whole different matter. I'm not claiming I had anything to do with the queers taking over the rainbow, but I wish they hadn't put the triangle on it, which I hate. Because I think, a rainbow has got every colour in it. You don't have to have more, and particularly those awful colours. Every time I hate Oxford Street at night ago.
Thanks for coming along and talk to us, Brian. You mentioned your work on shock treatment, which I also love.
Yep.
Was it more of a challenge to craft a look for a film that was a direct throwback to already existing films like Rocky Horror, or to try to capture a moment that was happening like shock treatment tries to do?
Well, shock treatment was going to be originally we were going to make a direct sequel where Dr. Scott was out at the crater and he'd found fragments of the characters, and he was trying to put Frankenfurter back together. And this was 9 months after the event, so the question was, Janet's baby, would it be Brad's? Would it be Frank's? Would it be Rocky's? Very good question. So there was a series of songs written for that. Then Tim turned it down, and we decided that we couldn't really replace him. We couldn't do Frankenfurter again. So the idea was to come up with the kind of evangelical thing. As I said, I scoured America to find Denton, but we ended up in Dallas, Texas, because it's a right to work state, which means the unions can't dictate as to, you have a car and you have a car and I have a car. We can't go home together and talk, for instance. So I'd found all the locations, and we're going to do some stuff in England as well. And then there was a writer's strike, and we all got fired. And so we went back to London. Jim thought we should do it on stage and put it onto this brand new thing called VHS tape and release it in that way. I who always loved soap operas and quiz shows, and I love going to America and watching all that stuff. And I said, well, we could do it in a TV studio and make it a microcosm of Denton, so that rather than houses or streets or locations, they could be shows, and that's how it developed. I think the opening, the first half of that movie is fabulous, and then I think it's but some of the songs, like the song Breaking Out, I mean, that was, Frankenfurter was going to sing that at the Crater, and a lot of the songs were actually going to be in that other film. And it's, I think, back to your question, that's what I wish we could have done. I'd like to do a prequel. I'd love to know what it's like on that planet, wouldn't that be great to invent what transsexual was like? I mean, so, but with Shock Treatment, they do screenings and people go along and dress up and everything. What do you think of it?
I think it's great. Yeah. I think as much as Rocky Horror is this wonderful where people's heads are about the 50s at that point, I think Shock Treatment's one of the few movies that captures the Reagan 80s, not the big hair and the thing, but people living in suburbia and the friendly white cop and the friendly white neighbours and the 2 or 3 black people that are allowed to live there. It's a great miniaturisation of all that a lot of those films didn't touch, even if it is a bit confusing in the second half.
Yeah, I think, well, it was 1980, wasn't it? 1980, and it was, but there was just this, Dallas, Texas is an amazing town. Every suburb is different because of the kind of immigrants who created that suburb. So you've got such a wonderful range of images, and I'd found, Betty's car and all that stuff. So it was very disappointing to have to get in a plane and go home, and it wasn't going to happen. But I had 2 weeks pre-production on that film, because I had a fabulous, again, a terrific art director. In fact, he came out to be art director on Starstruck. But it was just working furiously, feverishly to get this thing done. But because it was all in the one place, and the other joy was having Barry Humphries, and I'd worked for Barry since the 70s things, and it was wonderful to have him just on the set. And there was a lot of good things about it, but that seriously bombed.
I think we'll do one last question.
I know you mentioned earlier you wanted the film to look a little bit more gothic. How do you think that would have changed the effect of the film or made the story feel
It's hard. I think it would have maybe distanced it a bit. I think that when Frankenfurter murders Eddie, it doesn't feel horrible, you know what I mean? But if it was, you could change that so easily by the way it was lit and by the way it was, you know, the colours that were used and the music. You could make it horrible, which was, I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, I think it's, I don't know, but I think it may have just pushed us all a little bit away from it. You might have still enjoyed it, but I think what's interesting about the sound also is that it was originally released in mono. That was a decision that was made. We wanted it to come from the screen, but hearing it now coming from is, I think, terrific. I think the arrangements are great in the movie. I don't know if you know that there's a different ending in America, where just the American release just had the narrator stop the globe on Australia. We had to do a lot of spins to get that right. And it goes straight into the time warp, and the credits rolling, so it doesn't have that crawling around the crater business. But I think I prefer this version. That's pretty gothic. I just sold that narrator's book for a lot of money, which is amazing. I didn't know. I'd given a friend of mine the costumes from that last scene, which were just in a box, and someone contacted him and he paid a lot of money for them. And he said, "Oh, I want to buy the book." And I said, "Oh, okay, sure, how much?" And so I used it to go on a trip to England. But I've got boxes full of stuff from all that stuff, and it's not so much what it's worth, it's who really wants it. This guy really wanted it. He's got his own little personal museum. And it was great to see it nice and because it's all falling to pieces. And Fox actually tore a lot of stuff out of it. And I think that was because maybe there were might have been copyright issues with some of the things. I mean, I just cut down the magazines and stuck it together. We did that, obviously it was done at the end of the film because before we filmed, so we made it during the film. I would just get stills and all that kind of stuff. But it was, and all the statements are actually as though Janet wrote them or Brad wrote them, and Dr. Scott's is terrific because he had a lot of secrets.
To wrap us up, I have one last question for you, and that's what's next for Brian?
I'm doing Guys and Dolls on the Harbour. That's what I'm doing. I just last Sunday I saw there's a wonderful, wonderful production in London, but I'm actually doing a production that has no neon, and I'm very proud of that. Whether the people who go to see the show are proud of that, I don't know, but it's kind of I've done a few things down there. You have to have a big idea. So basically it's a twice size yellow cab, and a great big, one-way sign which has the orchestra in it. So it's it's a different kind of look, but we're right at the point now where all the costings are coming in and all that kind of stuff, and it's that's part of the process. But so next March go down and have a look. And it's a fabulous show. The way they call it an immersive production in London. It's a smallish stage. It's in the round, but they have these elevators that come up through the floor. So every scene is on a little elevator, and it's some of the decisions made in terms of how they do it is just wonderful. And the audience go, and at the end they do a sort of a disco mix, and all the audience jump onto the stage, which is now flat, and dance for about 20 minutes. Whether we'll get that down there, I don't know.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Brian. So.